Right. Thank you, Chief Executive. We move on now to item 4, which is a paper on commissioning support, and I'm going to ask David again to introduce that for us.
Yeah, this is a thing which again has kind of significantly developed since the announcements around the white paper in June 2010. And there are some principles in all of this that are really very important. The first one was that the clinical commissioning groups should be able to buy the support that they need from wherever they feel it is appropriate, given the right kind of safeguards around the organisations. And I think that's an important principle to hold on to. There is no doubt, if you think about reducing the amount of resource in the system by a third, that the need to get benefits of scale of commissioning support are significant in order to be able to deliver. And also, I think one of the things that is very prevalent in the existing system is that some organisations were very, very good at commissioning some things, but not everybody. So how can we pool that, in a sense, that expertise? How can we bring it together and make sure it's for the benefit of a majority of the population, or all of the population, rather than just a small amount of it? So, but the issue then is, how do you provide commissioning support? How do you actually make it? How do you make it happen? Well, what was pretty clear was that there isn't a kind of a huge other group of people out there providing commissioning support. There are some in the independent sector, there are some in the third sector that do all of this, but it's relatively, when you think about the scale of what we have to do here, relatively small scale. The vast majority of the expertise, knowledge and understanding about commissioning support is wrapped up in our existing PCTs and SHAs. So the challenge to it is, how can we make sure that in the background of enabling people to have choice about commissioning support, we safeguard the services that we've currently got and ensure that we don't waste the talent that's already in the NHS. And this paper, in a sense, is a response to that challenge. So how can we do it? Well, the proposals here are that that commissioning support, in the way that much of the changes in the NHS reforms at the moment are driven, will be driven by local organisations and local bits of the system coming together. And it seems to be absolutely the right thing to do, but against a background of us identifying some really important things that need to be thought about, on which scale can be made significant difference, and they're listed in the document. But against a background of changing these our current ways of working, so that they're much more focused on delivering what CCGs want. And it's interesting culturally, if you think about it, many of the staff who will be providing commissioning support have in the past overseen the roles of practice-based commissioning and all the rest of it. So it's an inversion, in a sense, of that kind of relationship. Hence a lot of the emphasis around customer focus and that kind of thing. So this is a kind of setting out a roadmap for us to deliver that. It sets out how we can help and support the commissioning support organisations come together, how we can assure ourselves that they are capable of providing top quality commissioning support for CCGs, bearing in mind they've always got the option to go somewhere else if they don't like them. And to make sure that there is some kind of stability in the system to assure that we don't lose the talent that we have. Hence the idea that the commissioning board will host some of these organisations up to 2016. And we think that's a kind of pragmatic and a decent way of taking things forward. It will very much depend on the ability of our own staff who are leading commissioning support organisations, and hopefully working in partnership with the independent sector and the third sector to enable us to create really great commissioning support organisations. And it will depend on on the clinical commissioning groups and how they respond to it. But in a sense, this is a way of mitigating a significant risk to the system as a whole. Having said all of that, that then produces a risk for the commissioning board, undoubtedly. If these organisations do not respond and clinical commissioning groups do not wish to buy them, that leaves the commissioning board with a potential financial risk, and that's in a sense the next part of the work that they're working through. We think it's a manageable risk, but nevertheless it is there, but balanced off against the potential redundancies and re-employment and dislocation of service. We think it's very, very significant. So that's the document forward. We have made some changes to it since the original document was produced. We've been much clearer now about the principles, i.e. clinical commissioning groups can make a choice, and that the commissioning board will host up to 2016 when we expect alternative arrangements to be made. We focus quite a lot on how we can support and develop these organisations to provide great commissioning support to clinical commissioning groups. And we've also worked, I think, very closely with local government, particularly around some concerns that they had about commissioning support. I mean, we absolutely want to encourage joint commissioning between CCGs and local government. It's vitally important that happens, and we've stressed that in there. And there are some ways in which we can share commissioning support with them, and that leaves that open in the document that we have. So I think that's where.
Good. Thank you very much, David. Paul?
Just in support of that, Jack, I just make two points. One, the central importance of these commissioning support units to an integrated finance and accounting system. These commissioning support units will become the centre of excellence of providing the information that we're going to be so reliant on. And they're going to be a key feature of the financial control environment. So just wanted to emphasise that as being a key part of the infrastructure we're talking about. And then the second point was just to put a bit of scale on David's point in terms of the risk. I'm fully supportive of the proposal of keeping commissioning support units within the commissioning board, but these will be organisations with quite large turnovers. They could have a turnover as much as £500 million in terms of the infrastructure they're providing to the commissioning groups. So we've got some risk there if the CCGs decide not to take on those services. And again, it's difficult to calculate the likely employment redundancy liability that we might take on, but again, it could be as much as another 500 million. So there's some big numbers in here for what I agree is a very sensible way forward, but it's not something the board should take lightly in financial terms.
No, thank you for that caution.
I mean, in a sense, that's why we've set a process up whereby each of the clinical commissioning groups individually will have to be signed off by us against a background of a business plan that they have and a view about what customers have already signed up to before we do it. And I think that rigour is going to be really important as we go through it.
So we've done as much risk management as we can before we commit ourselves.
We've got a risk management process as part of that,
But we've still got quite a lot of risk after that stage as things develop, and as customers express preferences as to how they wish to commission or support. Kieran?
Three, if I may. Is there enough capacity in the aggregate, as far as you can see, not just to do the day-to-day safeguarding of ongoing commissioning, but we're also talking about moving care closer to the community, all of that kind of transition, reconfiguration, whichever word we want to use. And it strikes me that there's the staff bit of this as well, because there is clearly a lot of uncertainty among commissioning staff. This will provide some reassurance to a number of them, but getting that transition right and handling large numbers of people very well, very quickly, is also a risk.
It is, and it is changing as we go along. I mean, if you go around the country, I was in northeast London 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they've already got their commissioning support organisation up and running, and it's working, I think, remarkably remarkably well, and they've shown how you can actually make that change relatively quickly and create something which all of the clinical commissioning groups will buy into. So we can now start to see the models about how it might work in practice. Not every commissioning support organisation in that place. In fact, we're still going through a process of identifying how many there would be. When we started this process, people said there might be about 50 or 60 across the country. We're now down to about 23, 24 across the country, and it's just that has emerged out of people understanding what it is, bringing capacity together to ensure that you can do the sorts of things that you do, particularly prevalent in North East London, which has got a lot of change to do over the next year. So bringing all of that together, and I think we can see now how they're emerging, and we've got a series of I think that they're called checkpoints, where we're signing off the development of these organisations as we go along. So yes, we can move staff relatively quickly into these organisations, but I think part of the problem has been is that people have not been clear about what they don't sound very inspiring. I work for a clinical support organisation, but I think as we start to learn what they mean, I think more and more people are getting interested in them. It was certainly the case last week when we did a lot of the work around the communication of the commissioning board vision, that people started to get and understand that these were organisations that were really worth being involved in.
Sorry, David.
No, sorry.
Is there the 2016 and building the capacity to live in the world beyond 2016? That's not a short-term thing either. Is that something for today or next year?
Well, but I think this. I mean, we took I took the judgment that there was a lot of discussion about, was social enterprise the right thing to do? Was a joint ventures with the private sector? Was it what would be the model? And we took the view that trying to have a conversation about the model at the same time as trying to work out how to do it was just creating too many difficulties. So we separated that out.
I think that's the elegant.
So we've kind of said these, and then once we've got them, then we'll start thinking about the model. It seems to me that's the best. Otherwise, you just get yourself into a place that you. It is absolutely right.
Yeah. Thank you. Ed, over to you.
Yes, and I mean, this is a very important part of risk management through the first stage, and I do think it's an extremely sensible thing to establish. And I'd much rather go forward with this and then manage the risk if CCGs have made alternative, really good arrangements in terms of what we do, because the absence of something like this and the absence of alternative arrangements is actually obviously quite risky. So I'm very supportive of it. I was particularly keen to also see that 2016 is a clear date by which we expect to move to a different set of arrangements, because I think it's quite important as we set out on this journey. We have a first phase which is about managing the risk of transition, but after that we perhaps allow these organisations to move into different types of structures and ownership and things. So I was encouraged by that, and again support the high quality paper that underlies David's outlined statements.
Right, thank you. Have there any other comments from officers or members? No? Okay, in which case, thank you very much, David, for the paper. And I would invite the board to note and agree the next steps and to approve publication of the paper on developing commissioning support towards service excellence. And critically to note also that there will be frequent updates to the board on progress as things develop.